All right, we are back, and it is time to talk about Dreamhack this weekend. Insane tournament. I was there casting. I know, Rotterdam, you were casting with NASL. Katz, I know you were casting on your personal stream. And Pig, you were probably just playing a lot of StarCraft and catching all the Zerg games.
Yeah, pretty
right?
much. I was just tabbing out when Zerg were playing, man.
Excellent. I get it. All right. Favorite games, anything. Just start talking, guys, because I'm so pumped over this event. I thought it was so fantastic.
Go ahead, Katz.
No, Yu-Gi-Oh versus Lucifron. Games 1 through 5 were they were all like the sickest games. There wasn't a bad game. It was just sickest games.
I was actually so sad about Lucifron going out, man. I thought he was going to get... I'm waiting. He's going to go deep one of these times. Apparently it didn't work out this time.
Well, it was a coin flip, so it was unfortunate.
No. That was a lackluster performance.
When Yu-Gi-Oh! Won, did you see the clip of him just jumping and screaming and running around?
Yeah.
Oh, God. And then Strelok didn't give a shit when he got drawn. They're like, oh, you got through. He's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I better get through, otherwise people would have died over here. You don't eliminate a Ukrainian by coin flip, man. It will be the last coin flip you ever do.
I didn't get to see those games because I was casting same times. Cats. What were the games like between them that were so good?
Yeah,
like what type of styles of strats?
That's the reason too. Like I figured I'm the only one who saw these games because you were casting, Roddy was casting. Pig might have seen it actually, but they were amazing. Like they were all macro long games pretty much.
They were just pretty tired as well, so they were doing weird strategies. That like 3-base Broodlord at like 13 minutes or something.
That's standard. That's a standard. Like
that's a standard Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like that guy's
like
crazy.
A few roaches with banelings to defend bio and mines, and just doesn't take engagements, just defense, and then goes super fast Broodlords. It's pretty nice. He did it a lot in that against Lucifron and Strelok. It's a crazy strategy. But the most exciting games were like, I don't know, like 40-minute games on there was 2 on Whirlwind, and they were like Lucifron was going mech. It was like Lucifron had like 1,000 fucking ravens. Yeah, against like 1,000 infestors. It was insane, and like every time one of them would move to kill one base, the other one would move to kill the bottom base. It was like never ending. Just like they would keep avoiding each other, like killing the bottom and top bases. I don't know. That series was insane. It was crazy good.
Sick. Pig, what games did you like over the weekend?
I think my favorite game is TLO versus Naniwa Game 1. I don't know.
Oh. I didn't expect that actually. The Belshir Vestige one?
Yeah. Belshir Vestige, yeah, that was he just does that 2-base Nidus so well. And then I always felt like its weakness is if you're just playing a top level Protoss who gets pylons out and just keeps counterattacking with either a prism and I'm like, I just thought there's no way you can balance this. As soon as I saw Naniwa, just kind of like go, all right, I'm just going to force field out these locusts and I'm just going to keep warping in zealots. And like TLO is just like hopping in his Nidus, hopping out, burrowing, swarming locusts, unburrowing, hopping back in the Nidus, popping out and sending locusts at Naniwa's base. And then like his hatchery got to like 10 life at one point, and his queens are like transfusing his natural, like saves it just as the last zealot dies. And then that was just such a clutch game. I think that was the most exciting for me.
Yeah, I don't know if I really like Stormhost play off that little economy. I really, truly feel if he got a second Robo, he would break that. What do you guys think about that?
It's hard though. Like often you think that, but if the swarm host just keeps growing, and if the swarm host count goes up to like 12 or 14, I've had games where I literally had like 6 to 8 Colossus, and I still couldn't deal with it anymore because on Belshire Vestige, your Colossus often don't have like room to make that perfect arc. So it's only like 4 Colossus that can really shoot at a time because the Nexus is kind of blocking like the perfect positioning. So if you're just like the more defensive you play, you really do want to get aggressive out on the map as well. I do think it's very important.
I think the War Prism is the most important part. Like he denied that third and then just kept on harassing. The harassment kind of fell off eventually when the Spore got the War Prism. That's always sad. But I don't know. Do you guys think that strat will actually stay around, like a 2-base Nidus with the Swarm hosts? Like, is that?
I don't.
Because I don't either. But what do you guys?
Yeah, I don't feel it's so solid, but it's really hard to react because there's the let's counterattack all out, just try and barely hold with one Robo chrono boosting Colossi. But because if you go for 2 Robo Colossi, it often gives the Zerg time to actually get a Hive, and as soon as they have some Vipers out, like there's no way a Protoss is going to have the economy for Templar. So I think it's just like any other kind of and they take a third, but it's more of a 2-base timing, and I think it kind of revolves around surprising the Protoss. So I think it'll kind of hang around as just this timing we see once in a while. And I think because TLO is the only guy that's doing it a lot still. Most people have stopped doing it. So it kind of really works because everyone's out of practice against it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, it's kind of neat too.
Outside the metagame.
It's like a little bit of a meta thing too, because he does it with like a lot of Queens and Spores, whereas everyone opens Stargate and stays on it to like 5 Phoenixes, and there's nothing more useless than 5 Phoenixes against that build. Like that is, I don't have any idea what you're supposed to do with those. You might have like one Void Ray and like a Mothership Core like trying to kill the Nidus, and it just is never going to happen. And
yeah,
I don't know.
It's a nice meta build, I think. Yeah, I feel like 2 Robo Colossi deals okay with it. The thing is, you can't just sit there. You have to go and push out and kill them. And then there's other answers that people haven't really explored. Like War Prisms and Immortals are really good against this sort of push. I know because I do a 1-base version. Yeah. But yeah, Immortals 3-shot Storm Hosts. So you load 2 Immortals in a War Prism, and they wreck the Storm Hosts.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, and actually bringing the Immortals in the War Prism, like even if they somehow block it out through good zoning of the creeps seeing it and the queens running over or something, those are actually really useful to go over and actually kill off the crap in the Zerg main too, man. Because as soon as you kill that infestation pit, they're like, oh, just like that. You can hear it through the internet almost. Okay, Rotterdam, what are your favorite games from the weekend?
Yeah, I also listed that one, Nani vs TLO Game 1, even though I wasn't able to catch it completely because, as you pointed out, I cast a lot of games as well, but obviously you guys often had the mainstream games, so I didn't see much of your stream before the Final 8, unless I was on a break or just like in between a game. But I really enjoyed Nani TLO Game 1. I also really enjoyed Hero against Heian on Belshire, which I thought was a cool game, where he kind of faked like the 3-base play, cancelled the Nexus, and then it kind of turned it into a crazy base trade, where eventually he just got so many units. I thought that was cool. But the series that like I casted and I remember the best was Cass versus Sort of, which was pretty cool because Sort of, no one casted a single game from him throughout both group stages, and he took out some really, really good players on his way to the round of 16. And then he played Cass in the round of 16. The first game was an excellent waste. It was a really freaking cool game. He played a really interesting style with basically Hydra, Link, Baneling into like later on Ultras and stuff. It's really interesting the way he pulled it off, but it was cool. The only problem was that he had a lot of workers on hold position, but he didn't see it because it doesn't show up as idle worker. So basically all game long he was fighting with a far superior economy, taking really good fights, but then eventually like bio units just kept streaming in because Cass was so much richer. That game was really cool, and then game 3 between them was really funny on Star Station, which is probably like the most derpy game of the entire tournament, where both players just completely fell apart because of nerfs, I think. One moment, like he blew up his Banelings at the infestation pit and almost killed his own infestation pit, and just fights happening all over the place. But it was really fun. It was a really fun series. And obviously, like the games that really stand out for me is like Nani Jadong Game 3 Star Station. I mean, that was fantastic. I think everyone agrees upon. And to be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed the entire Nani Linux series because I think Nani played like a champ and he really fought like a lion. I think it was. I enjoyed every single game of that series.
Yeah, that was insane. By the way, big props to Nanawa. Like, he's back. Isn't that nice? Like, he was one of the foreigners that you counted on beforehand, but then he kind of disappeared for a bit. But do you guys think? Here's a question. Do you guys think Nani's really back? Or were his build orders just so great for the tournament?
I think it's both. Go ahead.
No, you go first.
I was going to say, that's always been Naniwa's strength. So I think he's back because of his build orders. Like, I don't know, like he's in Korea. The first thing when he got to Korea, he said like, "Oh, I just realized all my build orders suck because like I just lost like 1,000 zergs," and then he fixes it. That's always been his strength, I think. Just like Kiwikaki, like his strength was always build orders, not mechanics or anything like that. I think that Nani was back for sure, as long as he stays in Korea.
Well, he's in Sweden right now, I think. Right?
Is he?
I think he's staying there for a bit because of WCS.
Oh, the
Exactly.
WCS. Okay.
I think Naniwa played fantastic. Like he played beyond great. Some people can of course say like, oh yeah, he hit 2 foreigners on his way to the semifinal. But I haven't seen him play this good in a very, very long time. And I think, as we all know, Nani is a pretty emotional person. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But what I do know right now from Nani as well, that he just feels in a pretty good place, and that he just feels more happy than he's done in a long time. And that really helps him so much. And I think that, combined with his new builds, that really makes him play makes him be back. Or I even think that he's better than he's ever been, because the way that he played, despite losing that finals, like when he made the finals, I was so happy, I was cheering, but I also thought like, there's just gonna be no way, man. Linok is a freaking monster. But the games that he played against Linok is just, well, I did not expect him to play that extremely well against Linok.
Yeah, I think he did play like a champion. Pig, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I think he's back for sure. I think what you were saying just then, Kevin, is so true. I could see just by the way he carried himself on stage and in his interviews, he seemed like a changed person. He seemed really kind of calm and confident and happy and kind of satisfied at each stage of the tournament with his performances. So I don't know, just watching him on stage, I was like, oh, Naniwa looks really really calm. And yeah, I don't know.
On that topic, I think that was the best mindset I have ever seen Nano in by about 100%. And on the topic of mindset, real quick, TLO is hitting like a new level of great mindset, and he crushed through the tournament till he hit Nano. So I think that's actually a big thing that's happening with foreigners right now. People are fixing their mindsets and getting into a place where they're like, I have to play my absolute best, as opposed to, complaining about balance or something like that.
And one thing I want to highlight as well, did you see Nani's guns? He's been working out, man.
Yeah.
I think it helps. Showing off them biceps, it helps.
That's all the rage in esports right now. All of us are going to the gym. We all realize that.
You just have to shave your head. You have to shave your head too, Dan.
Yeah, I guess I should do that. We should just all be bald, ripped commentators. Caldor got it right. We all got it wrong.
Yeah. Calder was so ahead of the meta. So ahead.
Is Nanoa the best foreigner?
Yeah.
He was that weekend. We know for a fact he
yeah.
was that weekend, but you can't use that as a cop-out. Is he the best foreigner?
I think at Dreamhack, as you said, he was by far. I still think it's a little hard to say overall right now he is the absolute best, because, I mean, we cannot judge everything on one tournament. He didn't hit every single player, but I think it is very likely that he currently is, because the way he played against Linok, I can say for sure that no other foreigner would have played as well against Linok as Naniwa did. There's just no way.
I think you're probably right there. Katz, what do you think? Is he the best?
I think he's one of the best. I can't say that he's not because I couldn't pick someone over him. But I just don't think he's the absolute best. Like, yeah.
Okay. Pig?
Yeah, I don't have much to say, man. Like, I think he's the best right now. I'm copping out. He won Dreamhack. He's the best right now. That's it.
Yeah,
there is, man. Well, he came second, sorry. He won the foreigner competition.
That's gonna be on Liquid. That's gonna be on Liquipedia one day. It's like achievements. It's like best foreigner. It's like overall 9 to 16 at MLG. You know, number one foreigner competition.
That's sometimes. Okay, so we have to talk about this strategy that has come up, because I have like a brain full of thoughts and questions and amusements, and the Zerg vs Protoss, 2 base Lings with 2 Evos into 3 base Ultras. This is a crazy build. It popped up all weekend long. Stefano was doing it, Jadong was doing it, Lenok was doing it. I'm sure some others were doing it, but it's not in my brain right now exactly every single player that was doing it. But this is obviously really popular, a new build in the metagame. Like, we have so much to discuss with it, because, like, is it good? Is it not good? Where's strengths, weaknesses? Who wants to start this? Because I feel overwhelmed with all my thoughts on it, because I watched it all weekend long.
I'll let the pros start.
Hey, do it.
I've been thinking about it a lot because I watched it all weekend. I think the first time I saw it was GSTL, NS Hoso versus Startail. Curious tried to do it against what's his name, San. They brought San out, and he basically attacked into a wall of gateways against like +1 Stalker Colossus, and his ultras just hit the gateways and died.
Oh, that was on DMZ.
Yeah,
you're
it's
right.
one of those new maps that
Oh,
I've never played.
I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. That
Exact
game. Okay.
same build. It's really popular at the
Yeah, I
moment.
didn't. I didn't notice it at the time. I'm like, what is Curious doing? And then he attacked those gateways. That wasn't very good.
Well, yeah, he was actually in a good position that game. I remember
Yeah.
watching it that game and thinking, wait, he's in his 3-3 versus like +1 or 1-1 or something. And if he just gets some Vipers and actually blinding clouds, he can force an engagement in one of these, not so good positions. But it's kind of a strategy, upgraded zerglings, which we've seen in Zerg vs Zerg as well, a lot. And I think it's kind of similar, my thoughts, in how you're meant to deal with it at least. Like it's incredibly powerful if they start dealing damage. If you leave a gap in your wall and you let a counterattack into your main base, everything spirals out of control so quickly and everything just goes to crap. But I feel like if you can deny all damage, then you are going to be in a good position because those Zerglings at a certain point aren't going to be useful in the fight, even though they've got good upgrades. So that's kind of how I feel about it. It's all about how does the Protoss secure a third without letting that Nexus get cancelled and without letting any Zerglings actually kill sentries off. And that's the kind of hard part. When do you take the third base? And when do you spot that they're actually going for this build?
Yeah, I guess that is quite important. And I guess what Protoss opened with, in my opinion, seems like a big factor, right? Because Nanawa was like skimping on Phoenixes when he figured out that, oh, this is what's going on, and like going for quicker robos, which makes me scared because if you're on like, you're going robo and instead of ultras he techs into mutas or something, that can be quite scary. It seemed like a lot of mind games going on, but still, I wonder, Rotterdam, what do you think about the build overall?
I was just about to say, I really think that this build is so good because of the Ultralisks, which are not being produced. Because I really think that so many Protoss players go Stargate for the sole purpose of not going to play against straight mutas because they are just afraid to play against Ultralisks. And that build in particular is very good against Stargate, I think, because with Stargate, obviously, it's always a little bit harder to secure your third base. You have a little few units. It is hard that your Stargate unit is actually going to pay for itself when you play against links. I mean, you're not going to lift up links, so if the overlords are well protected. So it's basically just that potential threat of mutas, which I think makes that threat so good. And I think if Protoss completely ignores the Stargate and just goes straight up Robo, gets a Twilight, gets some Archons early on, I mean, sure, that's going to be very good against that Ling Ultra, but what stops the Zerg from dropping a Spire on any given point?
Yeah.
Cats, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with that. The Spire transition could be tough, but I agree with Pig that if the links don't do a lot of damage, then, or they become kind of useless. And also Naniwa showed kind of like what you were talking about in the game against Curious a little bit when he tried to make a pylon wall. Like that's a really effective way to deal with ultras, just walls and buildings, and because they're so fat, like it's hard for them to maneuver, and if you're attacking one at a time, it's really not that hard. And I feel that once Protoss gets to a certain supply, then ultras become a lot less efficient as well, and they're really cost inefficient because they're so expensive, I think. So I like the build. Not saying that I don't. I like that Lenok added queens, where Jaedong didn't, I think. I really think the queens are big, and yeah, I think the Vipers would be the next step to be able to fight in chokes, like Pig said as well. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that Muta region should be nerfed, to be honest. It's just because CVP can be silly.
I don't disagree, because we are seeing like a lot of mutalist switches. Because I'm starting to think about it, right? I'm looking at the games, and what if you start off, right, with your masslings, your layer just finished, you're getting 2-2, you're going to see a Colossus poke out right after they're taking their third. By then, right? That's going to be... If you see that Colossus, can't you just cancel your tech towards Ultralisks and go into a Spire? And like you'll have map control long enough with the Lings that you can get into mutas, and then suddenly it's like...
You would probably die. I think you have to preemptively.
You think the timing would hit it just right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think you can drop the Spire much quicker, and as long as it's there.
Yeah, if it's preemptive, yeah.
So like right after the layer, if you drop the Spire, what is Protoss to do in this situation? Does it turn into a guessing game?
I think
A little
Protoss is
bit,
gonna
yeah.
drop Stargates. Like, I mean, yes, it's possible to defend with Blink Stalker / Storm, but that also basically says, okay, I'm gonna defend for the next 8 minutes in this game, and if they drop Stargates, well, I mean, today, I don't know if you guys saw it, like we spoke a little bit before about it on the show, with Linux against Minigun, no, not Linux, Nesty. I think that was so sick. I mean, Minigun does the right thing. He spots the Spire, and Nesty like starts +1 immediately, but he doesn't make the mutas. He sends an Overseer, but he doesn't see anything, and he's just like, you know what, I'm gonna send one more. And then he sees double Stargate, and he's like, all right, have fun with all your Phoenixes. I'm just gonna make 7 Corruptors and have fun with your Phoenix, you know? I think that kind of stuff is just so sick, and I think we're going to see that more and more and more. Just all these mind games. I mean, on a certain point with Linux against Naniwa, the production tab was just ridiculous. It was like +3, +3, +3, with +3 air and +5 for the Ultras. It's just like 5 massive upgrades going down at the same time. It's just unreal.
Yeah, and the actually going back to that, the big Mutalisk switches, because this is actually something really interesting. Because you know, if you max out and there's no fights for a bit, because I've been saying for a while there's no clock on Protoss right now in Heart of the Swarm, and I don't know if that's actually going to be true in the next week or so, because now I'm starting to feel like, well, you know, what I was doing before was sitting back and be like, all right, I can counter whatever units you get out, but once Zerg has like 5 bases and they bank 3k, 3k, then suddenly, well, there's kind of a clock on you, because if your composition isn't right, they can lose their army and make 30 mutas. Is there a problem with this? Is this something you've tried out, Pig, at all?
I don't know. It's difficult because I personally have been, I think, probably a bit lazy in my Zerg vs Protoss. I've been really perfecting variations of Swarm host play, where I'm using a lot of either I'm using a lot of drops and a lot of Ling Hydra Muta, where I kind of really do the tech switches in the early mid game with a lot of aggression, force the Phoenix out, and force a lot of multi-prong. Either that, or as soon as it goes to late game, I personally do a style similar to Cats. So I do this kind of Swarm host siege, let's do it be a douchebag, and basically build 400 spines and spores across the map. And it's not good on big maps, so it's not a well-rounded style that I have in Zerg vs Protoss right now. But there's a point where I think there were quite a few games in Dreamhack. I noticed the Protoss players were getting Storm really, really late. And I felt that was really hurting when there were a lot of Ultra Hydra armies being used. And without Storm, it's really hard to actually deal with Ultra Hydra. They can trade quite efficiently. And then with Muta swaps following up after the Ultra Hydra can trade decently and just swapping between them, it kind of worked more efficiently than I'm used to it working when I've tried it out. But I don't think it's kind of set in stone just yet what will work.
Yeah.
I think it all comes down to when the Protoss can get the 4th base down. If they can get their economy big enough, fast enough, then they can play this, I can counter whatever you throw at me. But if the Zerg is on 5 base comfortably and the Protoss still doesn't have a 4th, I think the Protoss will get overwhelmed by Muta swaps.
Yeah, I feel like Muta mind games, like, you know, like dropping a proxy Spire when they scout a Hydra then are much more dangerous or much more annoying to the Protoss than the Muta switches. Because for Muta switches, like for the Zerg to make any relevant amount of Mutas, you kind of have to have a lead already. And you know, then you lose your army and then you're making 30 Muta. Well, then you have to have 3k banked, and your upgrades are probably not going to be great. And if that fails, you're dead.
But that's what I like so much, what we saw over the course of last weekend, where Zerg players are just upgrading like way in advance. It's just like, I might eventually go into this Muta switch, and then if I do, I already have +2 ready. And then they are suddenly so much more scary than just the 0-0 Muta switch, which is also scary. But I mean, if 2-2 is ready already, that's like a whole different ballgame, you know? It's only twice the problem.
That's pretty expensive too. I mean, that cuts into your army earlier.
It is, man.
Or anything you're doing. So yeah, I agree. Like if you're planning to go for the late game and not trying to kill them with any army or anything like that, you could just start upgrading, and then go for a Muta switch. But then you're preemptively, like basically that's your plan, right? So if that's the plan, then there's probably a way that Protoss can kind of scout it. I don't know. I feel like Muta switches are really powerful, but I don't think, like, Protoss seem to think that Zerg is just like this mine of gold that just can fucking throw unlimited units at you. And it's not. Like if Well, if that Muta switch gets shut down, you're dead. That Muta army is, that's pretty much how it goes. And again, to do that Muta switch in the first place, you need a pretty decent bank, a pretty well-balanced, decent bank.
Certainly. But is it possible to maybe take the strategy that we've seen all DreamHack weekend, right? The masslings into ultras. I feel like, you know what, when you get that out, you say, yeah, the later it gets into the game, the less good that composition is going to become. But like, let's say that, you get into that composition, you go over, you realize that, oh, they have a good enough army, I can't kill them with this. Because you don't want to lose, the ultras are so expensive, right? What if you have map control at this point, right? And actually go in the longer game? Because we didn't really see much of that. It was all kind of decided because Nano was like, I am going to kill. I'm going to kill them right now. And as we saw, like, for instance, on Whirlwind, that final game, he made enough spines that he couldn't be killed with it. Even though if he had brought a probe, oh, I would have loved to see what would have happened. But, that, like, if someone plays more like that and goes, if Nano's like, okay, I can't attack these spines, I have to, try to do something else. Of course, he was doing a slightly different build there. I mean, I'm getting kind of off topic and having a hard time explaining what I'm trying to say here, but the ultra mobility and the safety of like the Ling into ultra for a certain period of time, getting yourself more bases, getting more map control, maybe expanding further away from your opponent into areas that the ultimate mobility of your army is going to help out a lot. Is it possible to maybe mix the Spire in either preemptively or a little bit later in the game because you can kind of sit on your laurels while he tries to get the perfect composition to fight an Ultralisk-based army, which is the opposite of what you want to fight a Mutalisk-based army? The end. What do you think about that? I don't know if that was too much gibberish, like the flow of conscience from my mind, but...
Okay,
yeah,
Pick out first.
Yeah, Pick, what do you think about that?
Yeah, try to unravel that mystery I just said. Whoa. I talk about this for a living. Oh my god.
I was actually I was thinking about adopting this build and trying it out because I haven't used it, so I'm not an expert. But I was writing down the timings from looking at the VODs, and it varies depending on what sort of opener the Zerg's doing and all that sort of stuff. But often you've got your Evos go down, your third base is quite late, and basically everything fits in very, very tight. It's very, very low econ. Everything's very tight. So it is hard to squeeze stuff in. You can't be wasteful at all with your resources. If you don't get Lings in to do any damage, and they manage to kind of secure a third base, then things get iffy. But I think it very much revolves around how that third gets up and if they take damage or not. Now, assuming the game goes later, like there's going to be a point, I'm sure, where the Zerg does get like 80 drones, 90 drones, if it goes on and on. But the way I've seen it played out every single time is the Zerg wants to go and kill with that ultra timing, and they're very afraid to let it go any longer. Because I think every Zerg feels like if their 2 or 4 Immortals get out and some Archons, or the Protoss gets enough money to build a gateway wall, then that timing's over. But that being said, if you've got such a dominant army, well, you can start to transition out of it sooner. If Protoss gets so good at handling it, you're just forcing a reaction to move into the super late game with these amazing upgrades and a sick ultra army. So the Protoss can't really push on to creep and fight you. I think it could work, steady transitions into later mutas. But I think what's really interesting is what Kevin was saying with how do you if you just build a spire maybe somewhere as soon as your lair finishes along with your infestation pit. And it's like, how does the Protoss exactly figure out, do they hard counter the kind of ultra preparation? Obviously, you just need to keep on scouting the Zerg. And I feel like, from my kind of biased Zerg perspective, I don't think Zerg will be able to squeeze in an effective Muta switch until like 18 minutes into the game. Because I think after spending so much gas on the upgrades and taking such a late third base, it's not that late, but like you'd be able to spot it coming.
It's pretty late.
Normally, they don't take the gases on the third that fast. Actually, no, that's wrong. That's wrong.
Make a lot
anyway,
of
I'm blabbering now. Basically, it'd be really hard to squeeze mutas in the mid game. So I think if Protoss are really, really on top of scouting, they can stop it. But I'm not experienced with it, so don't take that as set in stone or anything like that.
I agree with Pig on a lot of that, actually. Like that build, usually when you're going into fast ultras, it's either like the style that Leenock and Jaedong played, And Linok was kind of relying on the Lings to damage. Like the other way is to kind of like just sit back with the Lings and counterattack if they move out, because your Ling army is not enough to hold until Ultras. But the way Linok was doing it, I think that Pig made the best point possible in that it's a really tight build, right? He has enough Lings to apply pressure and fight the Protoss army and even deny a third, which is insane. But that also translates into he doesn't have a lot of drones, or he doesn't have the gases at the third. And if you noticed, it wasn't always like, holy shit, like 1,000 Ultras. It was like 5, 4, you know? So yeah, I think it's gonna be really hard to squeeze anything into that build. So way later.
But I think, like, if we look at Nanima against Linok Game 5, the game that's on Whirlwind, in my opinion, the sole reason why Linok survives that is because he's able to make those Corruptors. Because at the end of the day, Zergling and Spinecrawlers are never going to kill Colossus. So he did drop that Spire because he did scouted what was going on the other side of the map. He realized he was going to go play against 2-base. So I think on that moment on, it just all depends on what the Zerg sees. It's not just what Protoss scouts. I also think it's so important what Zerg scouts, because I think that Linok would die without those 7 Corruptors, because he's never ever going to kill the Colossus, or am I wrong?
Yeah. I think you're right on that.
I think he was a bit lucky that he spotted the Robo Bay with an Overlord peak, like right when it went down, and Naniwa didn't even see the Overlord, and the Overlord kind of turned around and went out, and then came back like to double check that it was still there. So he dropped that Spire like instantly. It was down really, really early. So if you could hide the Robo Bay, I really thought that 2-base Colossus push, even with the Corruptors on the way, was going to kill him. But, you know, I think Linok reacted perfectly, and it was still a very close fight at the end. And yet Linok had the information almost as early as he could possibly have that information. So, I think that sort of push could definitely kill that sort of build.
Yeah, I mean the build in itself is a really like metagame build. But it almost seems to rely on the Protoss going Stargate and whatnot for it to be like at its maximum level of efficiency. So yeah, definitely Linux scouting there definitely helped them out a lot.
Do you think, because a lot of what you guys just said was based around seeing the Colossus coming out and dealing with those with that really quick Spire, do you think that Manoa could have switched it up, or any Protoss really could have, instead of gone to deal with the Masslings into Ultras, instead of going for a couple Colossus, going into Psystorm?
But then I think it makes a completely different game. Like Naniwa, I think, had this game set. He said, I want to hit this 2-base timing. I know what I'm going to play against. You know, because I don't think that Storm is ever good on 2-base. Like, that's just not going to work.
No. I guess I didn't mean it exactly like that. I mean, overall, the actual 2-2 Lings, Ultra, you know, the quick 2-base Ling into Ultra, is that a strategy that you can actually fight off well with a Psystorm as your splash damage type of thing, or some other thing I'm not thinking of, instead of Colossus? Because it seems like Colossus is so much more efficient against Lings than Psystorm is. What do you guys think about that?
I think that there will be a problem in that you won't have your Robos already up necessarily to build Immortals, and I think Immortals are really important for taking down the Ultralisks. But other than that, I think it can work. But of course, Psystorm, it's very hard to hit them just right on Zerglings. So
I definitely think
interesting.
I think observers are super important against that style as well, because the Lings are so mobile that I really think having observers is extremely key. And you also don't want to make like 5-6 sentries, because that's just way too much gas. Because hallucination is awesome, but I don't think you want to make that many sentries. So I really think that opening up with a robo is key.
So that leads me into the question, with this strategy, because no one really knew perfectly how to play with it. It seemed like Nano had the best idea. But as it evolves and people figure it out, is it going to automatically be, okay, he's doing this strategy, I need to get Colossus out, which automatically just makes a Zerg make a Spire? Could that occur?
I definitely think it can.
The metagame, you know how it goes back and forth.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
But
so where does that end up?
I think charge lots are pretty underrated. I think that like charge lots with good upgrades and then like Immortal Archon could be the.
But if you've already got an Infestation Pit, perhaps do you mean if you're just going Muta style? Because if you're going Infestation Pit, you can get Swarm Hosts and they just chew Zealots up for breakfast.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
You know where it ends up then? Roaches.
It ends up back at Roach. It's wonderful, as
We
all
go,
Zerg
we go
strategies
full,
do.
we go full circle, and then we remax on Roach.
Yeah, you kind of need the Colossi, I guess, then, huh? I'm trying
what
to think of a
about-
way around it.
What about like let's assume you're playing against this build. So this is for you, Dan and Kevin. You know you're going up against this build. Do you think something like just taking a third base off 6 gates, like not opening with tech, and just using some nice SimCity and good force fields to delay until your upgrades maybe equalize a little bit, like for the Ling pressure at least, and then going into your Robo off 3 base? And do you think that would be an effective kind of blind counter if the build is played textbook? You're playing someone who doesn't really adapt.
Yeah. Well, if you're going just gateways, I get a little bit scared of anything else Zerg can do.
Yeah.
So I never really like that. It's like just the complete blind counter of 6 gates into a third base. Like I don't think I've seen a Protoss do that probably since season 1 of GSL or something. But I don't know. Like I guess you would hold the Lings. Like if you know it's just Lings coming, you'll hold it. You will.
Yeah, but like, what if they what if they drop a Spire? By the time that you see the Spire, he's gonna have so many Mutalisks already, and you're sitting on your gateway units. I think that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the fear of mutas actually changes so much in PvZ right now. Just the fact that you have to factor them in at all moments that Zerg could be going for
If you scout the Spire fast enough, you could just attack with your 6 gateways, right? Like add 4 more.
Yeah. That's the thing. Overlords drop creep cats. You put that thing anywhere, man.
Well, you can always kind of tell too, right? Like,
yeah. You can feel it. You feel it in the air right before the mutas start. You're like, our muta's going to be on the way very shortly.
It's so true. That's so true.
It is true. So like right before, man.
It's like you're playing your game and you think everything is going well, and it's like, okay, hey, I haven't seen anything for a while. Is he going? And then it's like, oh, it's so freaking annoying. It happens all the time.
A Mutalisk flaps his wings, man, and Artosis shivers. That's... Oh, man.
It's always like right at the moment when the light bulb goes on, it's already they fly in your mineral line, and then...
If only we could get that light bulb a little bit earlier, I'd be so much better at Protoss, man. Oh, my God.
Same here.
So this strategy, right, the 2-base Ling into Ultra, I feel like everyone's kind of leaning towards it's a cool metagame build, but if people deal with it perfectly, then it should kind of peter out and go away. But at the same time, we're all kind of stuck on the fact that you have to go Colossus, which would mean that it would add a Spire by itself to deal with the Colossus, which would make the Lings better. And where do we end up with this? Because we're hitting kind of a theoretical circle. A little bit.
Last thing about it, though. We mostly saw that build on Star Station. And the third is really open and really hard to block with buildings. So I think it's a really, like, it varies per map.
I think
like
it doesn't exist on Aklon. You don't.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. Yeah, exactly. Because
maybe
you
roll
can roll
in Star Station or.
Yeah, Belshire would be harder as well, I think. Like,
Belshire would be a bit harder. But does that? Hold on now. Now, what happens to the strategy? Does it stay around? Does it stay good? And in that case, if it does stay good and people automatically go Spire to deal with the Colossus, do we suddenly have a situation where maps with that open third base area are not actually balanced one way or the other, or less balanced, or what? How? See what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, it's likely.
But it's really hard to say as well, I think.
Yeah, it certainly is. I ask you guys the hard questions, but you gotta do your best.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. Also, like, I don't know, like, all-ins should be pretty strong against that build, I think. Like, two-base all-ins, like, you know, like, lots of gateways or immortal all-ins.
Yeah, I'm sure that Mana would just make Archons on 2 bases with a bunch of Zealots and stuff, man. Like, don't try that against Mana, man.
It just wouldn't finish building, that's all.
Yeah, because, like, if you're making, like, a ton of Lings, and then your opponent's, like, making an army themselves, and they're not planning on taking a third, like, what are you going to deny, right? It's like, okay, now you got a lot of dead weight.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it'll be broken, but I think it's certainly a map-dependent build, and it's a really cool build.
Does it stay? Do we think it'll stay? Because we don't know, of course, but, like, do we think that this build is going to stay around? Like, or is this just, like, a little shift where we're like, cool, we know this can be done on this map, and that's going to affect everyone's brains on maps like this for the next 6 months?
I think the forms of the build, like I think the composition definitely stays, and the structure in itself, but perhaps not the exact same build that we saw this weekend.
Rotterdam?
I feel the same way. I definitely think it will stay, but I get there's just so much more to learn. I think it's really hard to give like, my opinion about it after just seeing it for one weekend. Well, from what I've seen, it looks really good. I cannot point out one thing which I think is incredibly good against it without it being able to counter that again. So I think it's going to stay around, but as Kat said, we're definitely going to see some changes and some, interesting developments in the matchup. I'm curious. We need rain and parting here, man.
That is true. Pig, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it'll be around for a long time. I don't think it'll be as common as we saw it on the weekend, because I do feel like if people react perfectly, then they're gonna start shutting it down to one extent or another once people have enough practice. But then when it's not so popular in the metagame, I think it'll be this great build to pull out in a best of series.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Cool.
I think we talked that strategy to death. So I think that nothing else can actually be said until we actually see many more games played with that. So I guess that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you guys for coming on. We'll do some little shout-out things. Pig, why don't you go ahead and start?
Just shout out to my team, Exile5, and their sponsors, Western Digital, CM Storm, Cooler Master, IINet, and NVIDIA, as well as Gigabyte Notebooks. And just, anyone who tuned in that loves StarCraft. Thanks.
And Rotterdam?
Thanks, Dan, for inviting me on the show. I think it's fun. I don't really do this kind of stuff often, but I did have a good time. It's always fun hanging out with you lovely gentlemen. And other than that, it's been a really happy day for me because I will be casting the WCS NA Nationals in the start of June. MLG invited Ben and me over, so we're going to cast that alongside XLev and Exotos. I'm super, super stoked for that. So happy day, happy me, and I hope people enjoyed having me on the show.
Nice. Cats?
Yep, congrats, Kev. And that's keyword. Please visit that'skeyword.com. And to you guys as well. Thank you very much. And visit root-gaming.com. And I'm pleasantly surprised at how cool Pig is. I knew he was cool, but like he's good at talking too. So big shout out to you.
Thanks, man.
It was pretty fun.
Pig.
Like I know you guys are skilled at the arts of war, but Pig was a sick surprise there.
But Pig and me, once upon a time, met the nicest man ever in China. Ain't it right, Pig?
That was a long time ago.
But it was a good night.
That was a very
A
good
story
night,
for
man.
another time, perhaps. So big cheers. Thanks to you guys for coming on. Shout out to Simpatico, who does all of our production and graphics here. He does a great job. He sits there during the show and tries to get everything up as we jump around topics with my crazy brain. And a big shout out also to Matt Eliantis, who made the theme song, which is so awesome. You can check them out there. Twitters are at the beginning of the show and stuff. TT Sports, my personal sponsor, and iBuyPower. I'm going to have a new computer to stream better with. And we're trying to work on the show still, guys, and trying to find a good time slot for it. I don't want to really overlap with other great stuff like WCS or Day 9 Daily and stuff. So still working on that. We'll announce the new whatever time we figure out for it coming up. So hope everyone enjoyed. There's like a coupon code for the handsomernerd.com, I believe, that we have, so you can check that out as well. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.